Welcome back, everybody. Okay, vocabulary flashcards. Let's get into it. This is a massive list. This is going to guarantee to help you get through this examination. 250 vocab phrases in flashcard format. Study hard, study well. We'll see you on the other side. Agency. A fiduciary relationship between an agent and a principal, also known as a client. In real estate, an agency relationship is formed when a principal, such as a property buyer or seller, authorizes an agent, typically a real estate broker or salesperson, to act on their behalf in a real estate transaction. Equitable title. Equitable title is the beneficial interest or right of ownership that a buyer holds in a property upon signing a purchase contract, entitling them to possess and use the property while the legal title remains with the seller until the completion of the transaction. General warranty deed. The general warranty deed is a type of deed that offers the highest level of protection to the buyer. It includes warranties or guarantees from the seller that they have clear title to the property and that it is free from any encumbrances or defects, whether they arose during their ownership or before. Negative amortization. When the loan balance increases over time due to the unpaid interest portion of the loan exceeding the amount of principal being paid off. Prepayment penalty. A prepayment penalty is a penalty imposed on a borrower for paying off a mortgage or loan early, often calculated as a percentage of the remaining loan balance, intended to compensate the lender for the lost interest. MLS. MLS stands for the Multiple Listing Service, is a database established to provide information about local properties for sale to cooperating brokers. Tenancy at will. A tenancy at will is a flexible lease agreement where a tenant occupies a property with the landlord's permission, typically without the written lease or fixed terms. Since there is no expiration date, a tenancy at will can be terminated by either party at any time with proper notice, also called an estate at will. Annual percentage rate. The annual percentage rate, or APR, is a standardized calculation that reflects the total cost of borrowing, including both the interest rate and any fees associated with the loan, including prepaid interest points. Dual agent. A dual agent is an agent or broker that represents both the buyer and the seller in the same transaction. Note to student, dual agency is prohibited in several states, and in states where it is allowed, it is heavily regulated and requires disclosures and consent from all parties. Jumbo mortgage. A jumbo mortgage is a type of home loan that exceeds the conforming loan limits set by the government-sponsored entities such as Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Typically, this type of financing is used to finance higher-priced properties. Puffing. Puffing is exaggerated or subjective statements made by a seller or real estate agent about a property that aims to enhance the property's appeal. Puffing isn't illegal if it does not cross the line into misrepresentation. An example would be, "This condo has the best views in town." Variance. A variance is a special permission granted by a local zoning board that allows a property to be used in a way that deviates from the current zoning regulations. Abandonment. Abandonment is the act of giving up ownership, possession, or interest in a property, often evidenced by the owner's intentional actions or lack of use or maintenance over a significant period of time. Elements of a valid contract. Elements of a valid contract include offer, acceptance, consideration, intention, legal purpose, and capacity. Default. Default is the failure of a borrower to fulfill the contractual obligations, such as failing to make timely mortgage payments. Intestate. Intestate is a legal term stating that a person died without a valid will. Probate. Probate is the legal process through which a deceased person's estate, including their real property, is distributed and settled according to the instructions of their will, or if a will is not present, the laws of intestacy. Master plan. A master plan is a comprehensive blueprint that outlines the intended development, land use, and zoning regulations for a specific area, serving as a guide for future growth and infrastructure expansion. Actual eviction. Actual eviction is the physical removal of a tenant from a rental property due to their failure to comply with the lease terms, including for unpaid rents. Constructive eviction. Constructive eviction occurs when a landlord fails to maintain a satisfactory living environment, making a leased property uninhabitable and essentially forcing the tenant to vacate. Latches. The principle of latches states that if an owner unreasonably delays in exercising their rights to a property, they may lose the ability to make an equitable claim to it. Remember, latches equals use it or lose it. Dedication. Dedication is the act of transferring ownership of land or property to the public for a specific use or purpose, typically for public amenities like roads, parks, or utilities. Listing agreement. A listing agreement is a legally binding contract between a property owner and their real estate broker, authorizing the broker or their agent to represent and market the property for sale. Material facts. Material facts are information about the property's history, zoning regulations, neighborhood conditions, nearby amenities, or other factors that could impact the buyer's decision to purchase. Note to student, unlike material defects, material facts are not necessarily flaws. Defeasance clause. The defeasance clause is a contractual provision that outlines specific conditions under which a mortgage or other encumbrance on a property can be voided or discharged, including the fulfillment of the mortgage obligation. Plottage. Plottage is the increase in value that can occur when multiple adjacent properties are combined or merged into a larger parcel. The total value of the combined properties is greater than the sum of the two individual parcels. REIT. REIT stands for Real Estate Investment Trust, is a form of real estate investing that pools individual investors' money to allow them to invest in larger, diversified portfolios of properties and receive dividends based on the income and appreciation of multiple properties from one investment. Statute of Frauds. The statute of frauds is law that states that certain types of contracts, including real estate contracts, need to be in writing in order to be enforceable. Title theory mortgage. Title theory mortgage is a legal concept where the lender holds the title to the property as security for a loan until the borrower repays the debt in full. The borrower is granted equitable or possessory rights while the lender retains legal ownership until the mortgage has been satisfied. Prescriptive easement. A prescriptive easement is a legal right granted to a person to use another person's property after they have been using it without permission, through open, continuous, and hostile use over a certain period of time. Subsurface rights. Subsurface rights are the legal ownership or control of resources such as minerals or gas found beneath the surface of a property. Net operating income. Net operating income is the money a property generates minus its operating expenses. Anticipation. Anticipation is the expectation or belief that a property's value will increase in the future. External obsolescence. External obsolescence is a form of depreciation resulting in the reduction in a property's value or desirability due to external factors that are beyond the owner's control, such as changes in the neighborhood, environmental issues, or other outside influences. FHA. The FHA stands for the Federal Housing Administration, is a government entity responsible for offering mortgage insurance to lenders approved by the FHA, and it establishes criteria for eligible loans aiming to enhance the accessibility and the affordability in the housing market. Prime. Prime is a fluctuating baseline interest rate used by banks and lenders. The prime rate is generally offered to borrowers with the best credit worthiness, and rates available to less qualified buyers go up in tiers from the prime rate. ARM. ARM stands for Adjustable Rate Mortgage, is a type of home loan where the interest rate fluctuates periodically based on market conditions, resulting in changes to the borrower's monthly mortgage payment over time. It normally starts with a lower interest rate for a fixed amount of time, usually 3, 5, or 7 years. Subordinate lien. A subordinate lien is a secondary or lower priority lien that is placed on a property ranking below a primary lien, such as the first mortgage. In the event of foreclosure or sale of the property, a subordinate lien will only be paid off after the primary lien is paid in full. CERCLA. CERCLA stands for the Comprehensive Environmental Response, Compensation, and Liability Act. It is a federal law designed to address hazardous substances release and facilitate their cleanup and impose liability on the parties responsible for this contamination. Note to student, CERCLA established a Superfund program to fund the cleanup and remediation of contaminated sites and brownfields. Trade fixtures. A trade fixture is a piece of equipment that is attached to a structure and used for business or trade purposes, such as ovens a baker has installed in a commercial kitchen. Unlike other fixtures, trade fixtures can be removed at the end of the tenancy, whereas regular fixtures become part of the real estate once attached. Sub-agency. Sub-agency is a relationship where a real estate agent, with the client's consent, delegates their duties to another agent who then represents the same client in a real estate transaction. Remember, the agent of the agent. Appraisal. A professional opinion of a property's value, which is supported by comprehensive market data, including recent sales of comparable properties, current market conditions, and the property's specific features and conditions. It must be completed by a licensed or certified appraiser. Principal. Principal has two meanings that we can look to for real estate exams. Number one, the person who designates an agent to act on their behalf in a transaction. And number two, the principal is also the loan amount borrowed from the lender, the original loan amount. Non-conforming use. Non-conforming use is a situation where a property is allowed to continue being used in a way that does not comply with the current zoning ordinances because the use existed legally before the new zoning laws were enacted. PEAT. The acronym PEAT can be used to remember the government's powers in real estate: police power, eminent domain, taxation, and escheat. Torrens system. The Torrens system is a method of registering land ownership where a government guarantees the accuracy of the land titles registry, providing security and clarity in property transactions. Note that this system is only used in certain regions or counties. Exclusive agency agreement. An exclusive agency agreement is a listing agreement in which the listing brokerage collects a commission for the sale if anyone other than the seller procures a buyer for the property. Fair Housing Amendments Act of 1988. The Fair Housing Amendments Act of 1988 expanded the protections of the Fair Housing Act of 1968 to include additional categories of handicapped and familial status. Syndication. Syndication is a group of investors who pool their capital to collectively invest in and profit from real estate ventures, sharing both the risks and the returns of the investment. Tenancy by the entirety. Tenancy by the entirety is a form of property ownership exclusively available to married couples, where both spouses jointly own the property with equal rights of control, survivorship, and possession. Depreciation. Depreciation is the loss in value to a property due to various factors, including wear and tear or changing market conditions. Economic obsolescence, functional obsolescence, and physical deterioration are all types of depreciation. HELOC. HELOC stands for Home Equity Line of Credit, is a type of revolving loan where homeowners can borrow against the equity in their property. A HELOC is a flexible source of funds that uses the property as collateral as needed, as opposed to a home equity loan, which is a fixed amount. Net listing. A net listing is a listing agreement that allows an agent to keep any amount of money that exceeds the desired sales price established by the seller. Superfund. Superfund is a federal program established to address the cleanup and remediation of contaminated hazardous waste sites across the United States by providing funds to facilitate the cleanup efforts. Point. A point is a percentage of the mortgage loan amount, with each point equal to 1% of the total loan. Now, typically, this is paid upfront by the borrower to the lender as a form of prepaid interest in exchange for a reduced interest rate. Eminent domain. Eminent domain is the legal authority of the government to take private property against the owner's will for public use. It is a constitutional right. Alienation. Alienation is the act of transferring or conveying ownership rights or interests in a property from one party to another. Fee simple absolute. Fee simple absolute is the highest and most complete form of property ownership. It grants the owner unrestricted rights and control over the property with no limitations or conditions. Fee simple defeasible. Fee simple defeasible is a type of property ownership where the ownership is subject to a specific condition or restriction. If those conditions are violated, the ownership may be terminated or transferred to another party, either by the original owner or a designated third party. Secondary mortgage market. Secondary mortgage market is a platform where existing home loans and mortgages backed by securities are bought and sold between lenders, investors, and government agencies. Escheat. Escheat is the process by which the government obtains property from someone who dies intestate or without a will. LTV. LTV stands for loan-to-value ratio, is the amount of the mortgage loan compared to the current market value of the property. TRID. TRID stands for the TILA-RESPA Integrated Disclosure, is a set of regulations that require lenders to provide clear and standardized disclosure forms to borrowers outlining key terms, costs, and risks associated with obtaining a mortgage loan. This is also called the Know Before You Owe Mortgage Disclosure Rule. ADA. ADA stands for the Americans with Disabilities Act, is a federal law enacted in 1990 that prohibits discrimination against individuals with disabilities, ensuring equal access to employment opportunities, public accommodations, transportation, and more. Easement. Easement is a legal right granted to a person or entity that allows them to use another person's property for a particular purpose and for their own benefit, while the property owner retains ownership and control over the land. Option. Option, a real estate contract that allows a buyer the exclusive right to purchase the property, but the buyer is not obligated to do so. Appurtenant easement. An appurtenant easement is a legal right granted to a property owner to use a portion of another property for a specific purpose, such as an access road to a landlocked parcel or to run utility lines across it. Easement by necessity. An easement by necessity is a court-ordered easement granted to a property owner for access to their land, usually because there's no other reasonable alternative route available. Prescriptive easement. A prescriptive easement is a legal right granted to a person to use another person's property without permission through open, continuous, and hostile use over a certain period of time. Redlining. Redlining is a race or ethnic-based discriminatory act in real estate financing when a lender rejects a mortgage application for a property in a certain neighborhood. Underwriting. Underwriting is the process of evaluating and analyzing the financial and creditworthiness of a borrower, as well as assessing the risk associated with the mortgage loan application. And this is done to determine if the borrower qualifies for the loan and what terms and conditions the borrower will qualify for. Bill of sale. Bill of sale is a legal document that serves as evidence of the transfer of ownership for personal property, not real property. Tenancy in common. Tenancy in common, when two or more parties share ownership rights of a piece of real estate and can transfer his or her share of the rights to another party. A deceased co-owner's share of the property goes to his or her heirs in a tenancy in common. Lien. Lien, a creditor's claim against a piece of property due to the non-payment of a debt. PMI. PMI stands for Private Mortgage Insurance. It's a type of mortgage insurance sometimes required if you have a conventional financing without meeting a minimum down payment amount. Acceleration Clause. The acceleration clause is the right of a lender to require the remaining balance of a mortgage loan to be paid in full immediately. Facilitator. A facilitator is an individual who assists the principal parties to complete a real estate transaction without acting as a fiduciary to either party. Steering. Steering is the discriminatory practice of guiding homebuyers towards or away from certain neighborhoods based on their race, ethnicity, or other characteristics protected under the Federal Fair Housing Acts. Capital gains. Capital gains are net profits on the sale of an asset such as a piece of real estate. Millage rate. The millage rate is a tax rate used for calculating local property taxes. A mill is equal to 1/1000th of a dollar and is multiplied by the taxable value to determine real estate taxes owed on a property. Sherman Antitrust Act. The Sherman Antitrust Act is a federal law that aims to prevent monopolies and restrain anti-competitive business practices to promote fair competition and protect the consumer. It prohibits various anti-competitive practices in real estate such as price fixing, bid rigging, market allocation, and group boycotts. Appurtenance. An appurtenance is a right, interest, or restriction that is attached to a parcel of real property, i.e., an easement. Life estate. A life estate is a type of freehold estate where the owner has the right to use the property for their lifetime, after which the title passes to a grantor or another previously named party. Mortgagee. The mortgagee, the lender or the financial institution that provides a loan, the mortgage, to a borrower for the purpose of purchasing or refinancing a property. Mortgagor. The mortgagor is the borrower or property owner who obtains a loan, the mortgage, from a lender, pledging their property as collateral and assuming the obligation to repay the loan. Arrears. Arrears, the payment that occurs at the end of the term as opposed to at the beginning. Improvement. Improvements, any alterations or repairs that substantially add to the value of a property. Police power. The government's authority to regulate and control land use or development for the public welfare and to ensure the health, safety, and general welfare of the community. Police powers include zoning, building codes, and other regulations. Title. Title is proof of the legal rights of ownership and or use of the real property. Cloud. A cloud is any encumbrance that could impair the ability to transfer a title of real property. An example here would be a lien. Marketable title. Marketable title, a property title that is free of all defects or encumbrances and can be freely transferred. Adverse possession. Adverse possession is the ability to claim ownership of someone else's property based on their open and continuous use of the property without the permission over time. Encumbrance. Encumbrance, any claim, lien, or restriction that limits or burdens the ownership or use of property, potentially affecting the property's transferability or market value. Encumbrances include mortgages, easements, tax liens, and more. Mrs. Murphy exemption. The Mrs. Murphy exemption is a legal exemption that allows owner-occupants of 4 units or smaller properties to be exempt from certain fair housing laws and regulations, allowing them to exercise more discretion in selecting tenants for their properties. This exception does not apply to rental advertising. Severance. Severance is the act of changing an item of real property into personal property by detaching it from the land. Latent defects. Latent defects are hidden or concealed flaws within a property that are not readily apparent upon the reasonable visual inspection and may affect the property's value, safety, or function. Material defects. Material defects are significant flaws or issues with the property that could potentially affect its value, safety, or desirability. Material defects must be disclosed to potential buyers as they may impact their decision-making process. Special assessment. Special assessments are a levy or charge imposed by a governing authority on property owners within a specified area to fund the costs of improvements, repairs, or public projects. Chain of title. Documents the history of ownership of a piece of property such as real estate. Habendum clause. The habendum clause is a statement within a deed that defines the ownership or interest being conveyed, specifying the extent and duration of the rights and restrictions associated with the property transfer. Deed. A deed states who owns a piece of property and represents a transfer of ownership from one party to another. Fixture. A fixture is personal property that is converted into real property by permanently affixing it to the property, typically through some type of installation or attachment. Client. A client is another name for principal, the party in a transaction who is represented by an agent. For example, in a real estate transaction, the client of the listing agent is the seller, and the client of the buyer's agent is the buyer. Customer. A customer is a third party in a real estate transaction who is not directly represented by the agent. For example, a home buyer is a customer of the listing agent because the listing agent is working on behalf of the seller, not the buyer. Proration. Proration is the division and adjustments of certain expenses at the time of closing, such as property taxes or utility bills. Now, these are split between the buyer and the seller based on the portion of the time each party owns the property. HUD. HUD is the Department of Housing and Urban Development. It's a government agency responsible for promoting affordable housing, enforcing fair housing laws, and implementing policies related to urban development and community revitalization. Testate. Testate is a legal term stating a person had a valid will in place at the time of their death. Commingling. Commingling is the act of mixing clients' transaction funds with the broker's personal funds. Conversion. Conversion is the unauthorized use of funds by a broker from a trust account for the purposes other than what they were originally intended for. Real estate. Real estate is land and everything permanently attached to it. Littoral rights. Littoral rights allow a property owner to use static or non-running bodies of water, such as an ocean or bay, that abuts their property. Riparian rights. Riparian rights are the rights of landowners whose property abuts a flowing body of water, such as a river or stream, to make reasonable use of the waterway. Conveyance. Conveyance, the voluntary and legal transfer of interests in real property from one party to another. Joint tenancy. Joint tenancy. With a joint tenancy, all owners jointly own the entire property, while in a tenancy in common, each party owns a specified share. The defining characteristic of a joint tenancy is the right of survivorship. Price fixing. Price fixing is an illegal practice where competing businesses or brokers conspire to set or manipulate prices, eliminating market competition and artificially controlling prices to their advantage. Cost approach. The cost approach is a form of real estate valuation that estimates the price of a piece of real estate based on the total sum of the land plus any building or improvements minus depreciation. Equal Credit Opportunity Act, ECOA. The ECOA is a federal law that prohibits discriminating against borrowers belonging to any protected class, ensuring fair and equal access to credit and mortgage opportunities. Buyer's agent. Buyer's agent is licensed real estate professionals who represent the interests of buyers in real estate transactions, providing guidance and expertise throughout the home buying process. Listing agent. A listing agent is a licensed real estate professional who represents the seller of a property, assisting them in pricing, marketing, and negotiating the sale of their home or property. Servient tenement. Servient tenements are parcels of land that are subject to the use of an easement and benefits the owner of the dominant tenement. Bundle of rights. Bundle of rights are the rights associated with the ownership of property, including the right of possession, control, enjoyment, disposition, and exclusion. Land trust. A land trust is a living trust that grants ownership of a piece of property at the request of the property owner and allows for the control of the property while the owner is alive. Reversion. Reversion is the transfer of property's title from the tenant of a life estate back to the grantor. Chattel. Chattel is movable personal property that is not permanently affixed to land, such as furniture, equipment, or livestock. Involuntary alienation. Involuntary alienations are types of title transfers caused by the forced loss of property, i.e. a foreclosure or adverse possession or eminent domain. Real property. Real property is real estate plus the bundle of rights that are attached to real estate ownership. Personal property. Personal property is any personal belongings that are movable and not physically attached to the real estate. Capitalization rate. The capitalization rate is the rate of return on an investment property based on the net operating income that the property generates. Hey everybody, I hope you're finding this flashcard review helpful, and just wanted to really quickly let you know that if you're looking for printable versions of these flashcards, we offer them for sale really inexpensive, and I'll put the link in the description below. You're going to find them pretty helpful if you're a kinesthetic learner. I like to have feel the pages of a book and feel the flashcards and look at them, so it's pretty helpful. It's also a great way to study with family, friends, and that kind of stuff. So link in the description below, and now back to our scheduled programming. Negligent misrepresentation. Negligent misrepresentation is when a real estate professional unintentionally provides false or misleading information to another party, causing them harm or financial loss due to their failure to exercise reasonable care in verifying the accuracy of the information being provided. Condemnation. Condemnation is the taking of private property for a public purpose through eminent domain. Freehold estate. Freehold estate is the absolute ownership of real property which grants the owner full rights and control over the property for an indefinite period of time. Caveat emptor. Caveat emptor basically means let the buyer beware, a principle that places the responsibility to conduct due diligence on the home buyer to inspect the property's condition and potential issues before completing the purchase. Quiet title suit. Quiet title suits is a court order used to establish the legal ownership of a piece of real estate by clearing the property's title of any previous liens or encumbrances. Dual agency. Dual agency is when a real estate agent or broker represents both the buyer and the seller in the same transaction. Dual agency is prohibited in many states because it has the potential to create a conflict of interest. Grantee. Grantee is a party who receives title, interests, and/or ownership rights from another party. Grantor. A grantor is a party who transfers the title, interests, and/or ownership rights to another party. Due diligence. Due diligence is the comprehensive research conducted by a buyer to assess a property's condition, legal status, and other relevant factors to identify any potential issues or risks before finalizing the purchase. Fiduciary duties. An agent's fiduciary duties refers to the legal and ethical obligations they have to act in the best interests of their client, including loyalty, confidentiality, full disclosure, accountability, and reasonable care throughout the real estate transaction. Civil Rights Act of 1866. The Civil Rights Act of 1866 is federal legislation that prohibits discrimination in property transactions based on race or color without exception. Procuring cause. The party in a real estate transaction who originated a series of events that resulted in the sale by being the first to introduce the ready, willing, and able purchaser. Contingency. Contingencies are a clause in an agreement that states certain actions must be fulfilled in order for the contract to be considered binding and enforceable. Estate in sufferance. An estate in sufferance is when a tenant continues to occupy a property after the expiration of their lease or rental agreement without the landlord's permission. Counteroffer. Counteroffer. The response made to an offer to purchase, proposing modified terms and conditions for the real estate sale, including price and/or terms and conditions. Encroachment. An encroachment is an unauthorized use of another's land where a structure or improvement extends beyond the property's legal boundaries and intrudes onto the neighboring property. Regulation Z. Regulation Z, part of the Truth in Lending Act, which protects consumers from predatory lending practices and facilitates informed decision-making for borrowers by requiring lenders to disclose all financing costs and terms up front. Deed restriction. A deed restriction is a provision in a deed that limits how the property can be used. Emblement. Emblements are crops or agricultural products that are grown by a tenant on another's land. Emblements are considered personal property and may be harvested and removed by a tenant even after the termination of their lease or tenancy. Right of survivorship. Right of survivorship is the right of a joint tenant to receive all rights and interests in a property they had shared with another joint tenant after that person's death. Economic life. Economic life, the estimated period of time a property is expected to generate income and remain economically viable, taking into consideration factors such as physical deterioration and market conditions that may impact its usefulness and profitability. Blockbusting. Blockbusting is the illegal practice of instilling fear in homeowners that home values will decrease due to the changing socioeconomic demographics in order to convince them to sell their houses for lower prices. Balloon mortgage. A mortgage in which a lump sum of the remaining borrowed amount is repaid in a single payment at the end of a loan period. Easement in gross. A legal right granted to a specific individual or entity to use or access a portion of another person's property for a specific purpose. An easement in gross is typically personal and non-transferable. Triple net lease. In a triple net lease, the tenant is responsible for paying not only the base rent amount, but also all property expenses, including property taxes, insurance, and maintenance costs. Negative cash flow. Negative cash flow occurs when a property's expenses are greater than its income. Implied agency. An agency agreement established by the actions of the parties as opposed to an express agreement.
Hey everybody, just a quick request. If you're getting some value out of this video, please be sure to like and subscribe, because the more the channel grows, the more free content we can put together for y'all. Thank you so much, and let's get back into it.
Amortization. The gradual repayment of a loan over time through scheduled installments, which include both principal and interest, until the total amount is fully paid off. Cooperative owners. Cooperative owners do not own their units, but rather own a share of the building. Lis pendens. A legal means for serving notice that there is a claim and a pending legal action against a piece of property. Scarcity. Scarcity is the lack of available real estate in comparison to its demand. Proprietary lease is a type of lease granted to the owner of a cooperative. Since co-op owners own shares of the building and do not own their individual units, proprietary leases dictate the terms of possession and use. Closing statement. A closing statement is a financial summary indicating funds that are due from or owed to the buyer and seller in a real estate transaction. Gross income multiplier. A calculation used to estimate the value of an income-producing property by dividing the sales price by the anticipated potential gross income. Express agency. An agency agreement established through a formal agreement where a real estate agent or broker is authorized by a client to act on their behalf. Brownfield. A former commercial or industrial property that has been abandoned or is underutilized due to fears of potential environmental contamination caused by hazardous waste. Law of agency. The laws which define the roles, duties, and responsibilities of an agent and principal in an agreement or transaction. Deficiency judgment. A legal ruling where a lender obtains a court order to pursue the borrowers for the remaining debt after a foreclosure sale, aiming to collect the shortfall between the sale proceeds and the outstanding loan balance. Modified gross lease. A lease agreement that combines elements of both gross and net leases, where the tenant pays a base rent amount while also being responsible for certain specified operating expenses. Special warranty deed. A legal document used to transfer property ownership to which the seller guarantees to defend the title against any claims or defects that arose during their ownership, but not before. Fiduciary. A fiduciary is an individual or entity, such as a real estate agent or broker, who is entrusted with the duty to act in the best interest of their client. Capital improvement. A capital improvement is any alteration or repair that substantially adds to the value of a property. Origination fee. The origination fee is the fee a lender charges for funding a mortgage loan. Equalization rate. The equalization rate is a calculation used to adjust the difference between the assessed value and the actual market value, helping to ensure uniform property taxation. Annual cap. The annual cap is the maximum amount the interest rate on an adjustable rate loan can increase over 1 year. Consideration clause. The consideration clause ensures that there is a mutual exchange of something of value to make a contract legally binding. Estoppel. Estoppel is a document used as proof to certify facts pertaining to a person's legal rights and interests in a property. An estoppel certificate is typically requested for a tenanted property in lieu of a signed lease to disclose the current lease terms. Quitclaim deed. A quitclaim deed is a contract that allows one party, the grantor, to assign ownership to another, the grantee, without stating the nature of the grantor's interest or rights and while making no warranties. Market value. The market value is the estimated price at which a property would reasonably sell between a willing buyer and a willing seller in an open and competitive market, considering factors such as location, condition, demand, and comparable properties. Power of attorney. The power of attorney grants someone the legal authority to act on behalf of another person, allowing them to make decisions, sign documents, and carry out activities related to the contract, including for real estate transactions. Codicil. A codicil is a legal document that serves as an amendment or an addition to an existing will, allowing individuals to make changes or modifications. Homestead laws. Homestead laws are laws to protect a homeowner against the loss of their primary residence due to creditors. Timeshare. A property ownership structure where multiple individuals or parties have the rights to use and occupy the same unit or property for a specified period each year. Living trust. A living trust is a legal arrangement established during a person's lifetime that conveys legal title of the property to a named beneficiary. Credit. When a seller has prepaid their real estate taxes, they can expect to see a credit on their closing statement for the remaining calendar days in the year. Mechanic's lien. A mechanic's lien is a lien placed on a property by a contractor, builder, or tradesperson for unpaid debt for work performed. Addendum. An additional document or provision that modifies, clarifies, or supplements the terms and conditions of the original contract, serving as an addition to the contract. Primary mortgage market. The primary mortgage market is the main mortgage loan marketplace where lenders originate new mortgages and borrowers obtain financing directly from these lenders. Deed in lieu of foreclosure. A deed in lieu of foreclosure is a voluntary agreement between a borrower and their lender where the borrower transfers the property's ownership to the lender instead of going through the foreclosure process. This is usually done to avoid the negative effects of a foreclosure, including damage to one's credit score. Performance. Performance is the act of fulfilling one's obligations in a contract. Wraparound mortgage. A financing arrangement where the seller retains the original loan and an additional mortgage loan is taken out by the buyer while also assuming responsibility for the existing mortgage, combining the two loans into a single payment. Fee simple estate. A fee simple estate is the highest form of real estate ownership, an estate where the owner has total control over the property without any legal restrictions. Net lease. A net lease is a lease agreement that requires a tenant to pay the rent plus a share of the property's operating expenses. Section. A measurement in the rectangular survey system that represents an area of 1 square mile and is 1/136th of a township. A section is equivalent to 640 acres. Group boycott. Group boycotts occur when 2 or more brokerage firms agree not to work with another broker with the intention of damaging the business of that broker. Accretion. Accretion is the accumulation of land over time by natural forces. Involuntary lien. An involuntary lien is a lien or judgment put against a property without the owner's consent. Open listing. A listing agreement where the seller allows multiple real estate professionals to market and attempt to sell the property, with only the agent who successfully brings a buyer receiving a commission. Effective age. The effective age is the perceived age of a property based on its appearance, upkeep, and overall condition as opposed to its actual age. Local level of government. Property taxes are typically established at the local level of government. Assessed value. The assessed value is the value of a piece of property used for tax purposes. Leasehold estate. A leasehold estate is an estate that grants the temporary right to use and possess a piece of property for a period of time but does not grant legal ownership of the land or real estate. Adjustable rate mortgage. An adjustable rate mortgage, or ARM, is a type of home loan where the interest rate fluctuates periodically based on market conditions, resulting in changes to the borrower's monthly mortgage payment over time. Escrow. Escrow are funds or documents that belong to a transaction and are held by a third party until a particular condition has been met, such as the closing of a real estate sale. RESPA. RESPA is a federal law that was designed to protect consumers in real estate transactions and requires lenders to provide borrowers with specific disclosures about loan terms and settlement costs. Junior lien. A junior lien is a lien whose priority is below that of a superior lien against a property.
Hey everybody, just a quick request. If you're getting some value out of this video, please be sure to like and subscribe, because the more the channel grows, the more free content we can put together for y'all. Thank you so much, and let's get back into it.
Buy down. A buy down is an upfront payment of fees or prepaid interest on a mortgage loan that lowers the borrower's interest rate for a specified period, leading to temporary reductions in monthly mortgage payments during this time. Fair Housing Act of 1968. The Fair Housing Act of 1968, part of the Civil Rights Act of 1968, is a federal law that prohibits discrimination in the sale, rental, and financing of housing. Avulsion. An avulsion is a sudden and significant loss or removal of land due to natural forces such as earthquakes or landslides, which alters the boundaries of the property. Package mortgage. A package mortgage is a type of loan that finances both the purchase of the real property and personal property, such as appliances or furniture, as part of a single mortgage agreement. USDA loan. A USDA loan is a mortgage loan program offered by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the USDA, that provides financing options for eligible homebuyers in rural areas, often featuring low or no down payment requirements and favorable interest rates to encourage rural development. Hypothecation. Hypothecation means the process of using an asset as collateral to secure a loan or mortgage. Air rights. Air rights are the legal rights to the space above a property that allow the owner the right to utilize or restrict the use of that space for construction, development, selling, or leasing the rights to others. Home inspection. A home inspection is an inspection for the property's condition conducted by a professional inspector to identify any existing or potential issues that may affect its safety or value. Sales comparison approach. The sales comparison approach is an appraisal method that compares a subject property to the comparable properties, including others recently sold in the area with similar characteristics. Functional obsolescence. Functional obsolescence is the reduction of a property's desirability due to outdated design or elements or features that cannot be easily changed or updated. Amendment. An amendment is a formal change or alteration made to the original terms and conditions of a contract. Down payment. A down payment is the initial payment made by the homebuyer, usually as a percentage of the purchase price. This is to secure a property and reduce the total amount being financed. Liquidity. Liquidity is the speed at which an investment property may be converted back into cash. Surety bond. A surety bond is a form of insurance used to compensate an aggrieved party who files a legitimate claim against a broker who mishandles funds or otherwise causes some kind of financial loss by failing to fulfill their professional obligations. Market allocation. Market allocation is an illegal practice where the competitors within an industry agree to divide a market or territory amongst themselves, limiting competition and allocating customers between themselves. Community property. Community property is a legal term to define the terms of ownership of property owned jointly by spouses. Gross rent multiplier. The gross rent multiplier is a method for estimating the value of an income property by comparing its cost to the amount of the gross rental income, or GCI, it produces. Predatory lending practices. Exploitative and unethical tactics used by lenders, often targeting vulnerable borrowers by offering unfair or deceptive loan terms, excessive fees, high interest rates, and other manipulative strategies that take advantage of borrowers' limited financial knowledge or circumstances. Gross lease. A gross lease is a type of agreement where a tenant pays the set rent every month and the landlord is responsible for the property's expenses such as taxes and maintenance. Asbestos. Asbestos is a fibrous mineral used for fireproofing and insulation, now considered to be a hazardous substance. Cooperative. A cooperative is a housing arrangement where individuals collectively own shares in a corporation or association, granting them the rights to occupy a specific unit within the cooperative building. Ad valorem taxes. Ad valorem tax is a tax based off of the assessed value of the property, i.e. the real estate property tax. Megan's Law. Megan's Law is a law that requires public notification and registration of convicted sex offenders. Rectangular survey system. Also referred to as the government survey system, it is a system that legally identifies, measures, and describes real property using longitude and latitude lines for reference. Voluntary alienation. The voluntary transfer of property ownership from one party to another. Mutual consent. Mutual consent occurs when two or more parties agree to the terms and provisions inside of a contract. Certificate of occupancy. The certificate of occupancy is a document that certifies that a building complies with the local building department and zoning guidelines and states that it can be occupied. Legal description. A legal description is a detailed written explanation that accurately identifies a specific property's boundaries and location. A legally acceptable property description is used for deed purposes and property transfers. Clean Water Act. The Clean Water Act is a federal law that aims to protect and restore the quality of water resources by regulating pollution and increasing water quality standards. Exclusive right to sell is a listing agreement in which the listing broker collects a commission for the sale if anyone, including the seller, procures a buyer. Percentage lease is a lease agreement where the tenant's rent is based on a percentage of their sales or revenue, typically used in retail or commercial properties. Comparable market analysis, CMA. A CMA is a valuation technique used by brokers and salespersons to compare a subject property to comparable properties in the area in order to determine the fair market value from a sales perspective. Lots and block system. This is a method of describing and identifying properties within a subdivision or plat map using specific lot and block numbers. The lot and block system creates an organized way to locate and distinguish individual parcels of land within a larger development. Tenancy in severalty. Tenancy in severalty occurs when a property has a single owner and the owner has exclusive rights to the property. Foreclosure. A foreclosure is a legal process through which a lender or creditor takes possession of a property due to the borrower's failure to make mortgage payments in order to recover all or some of their outstanding debt. A foreclosure is a type of involuntary alienation. Cession. When improvements or additions are made to a property to increase the property's value or functionality of the property. Equitable right of redemption. A legal principle that allows a delinquent owner to reclaim their property by paying off the outstanding debt, including interest and penalties, within a specified period, giving them an opportunity to regain ownership before the foreclosure process is fully completed. Non-homogeneity. The uniqueness of land, which means that no two pieces of real estate are identical. Township. A township is a geographic area in the rectangular survey system identified by its location from the baseline and principal meridian lines, measuring 6 square miles on each side and containing 36 sections. Closing. The final stage of a property transaction where all the necessary documents are signed, funds are exchanged, and the ownership of the property is transferred from the seller to the buyer. Income capitalization approach. The income cap approach is a method used to estimate the value of an income-producing property by analyzing its income potential by applying a capitalization rate that reflects the market's expected return on the investment. Reconciliation. Reconciliation is the process of analyzing and adjusting multiple valuation approaches and data to arrive at the final estimate of a property's value. Kickback. A kickback is a fee or bonus usually paid for the referral of business to someone. Right of redemption. The right of redemption is the right of an owner to reclaim their property that has gone into foreclosure by paying off the mortgage in which they defaulted, as long as it is before the completion of the foreclosure sale. Earnest money. Earnest money is a deposit made by the buyer to demonstrate their serious intention to purchase the property, serving as a sign of commitment when submitting an offer to purchase. Subordination clause. A subordination clause is a contractual provision that establishes the priority of one debtor lien over another.
Hey everybody, thank you very much for checking out our flashcard review. I hope you found it helpful. If you take the examination and you found that it helped you pass, let us know in the comments. That would be super awesome. We love listening to that. One of the big things that we love to do is we like to dedicate ourselves to our students and listen to the comments and feedback. Don't forget, we also offer these flashcards that are printable for sale. The link in the description below. And if you like the content, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. We also have tons of questions and all kinds of stuff that are available on our YouTube channel for preparation for examinations in real estate. Good luck with your studies and good luck on your exams. And thanks for checking us out. I look forward to having you in a session coming up.